There has been a call this week for Keir Starmer to ensure that he delivers on one of the promises that he made in opposition. And it was a promise about something called Oracy, which is, I suppose, best understood as a sort of oratorical skills. Oracy in schools would see speaking skills embedded in England's schools. And people like Michael Rosen are joining forces with former education secretaries like Charles Clarke and Estelle Morris to urge the Prime Minister to honour his pre-election pledge. And I'm interested to know what it's like not to have those skills. So in a way, I'm asking people to ring in, and people who don't like talking, to ring in and talk to me. But I think that is more likely to work than asking people who don't have phones to phone me. It's about the difficulty, and it's going to be quite hard for me to set this up without sounding even more conceited than usual, because it comes very, very naturally to me, as you would perhaps expect. I mean, I do this for a living. I've been doing it for ages, and I do it for 3 hours every day. So the idea of being frightened of speaking, not just publicly, remember, this isn't about debating societies and the like. It's about verbal communication. That being something that you are uncomfortable with is very hard for me to begin to understand. It's almost impossible. It comes as naturally to some people as breathing. Size of your vocabulary might have an impact on it. Somebody said to me once that one of the key drivers of child rage is an inability to express yourself. There is nothing more frustrating than not being able to articulate your feelings. And if you have special educational needs, or you haven't had a particularly good education, or you're not up on your literacy skills, if you find reading and writing difficult, if you find words difficult, whether through some sort of innate issue or whether through an environmental one, you will become much more likely, much more prone to violence, much more prone to great frustration. You think about it, it makes perfect sense. If you look at riots, you often find that people can't actually articulate what they think. We laugh at them sometimes. They get a microphone stuck in their face and they start talking about Muslimic ray guns or something like that, and we all think it's hilarious. But if that is the extent of your ability to articulate, if that's the extent of your ability to express yourself, then reaching for a brick and throwing it through a window is going to become a much more attractive course of action than it would for somebody who's perfectly capable of explaining themselves. Would someone who doesn't like speaking publicly please ring a radio show with 1.4 million listeners, points out Chris. It's not necessarily the best question that I've ever asked on the programme, but that's the question that I'm going to ask. And it may be that you've come out the other side, because the whole point of this story is that it can be improved. So Alistair Campbell, Michael Rosen, Charles Clarke, Estelle Morris are calling on the Prime Minister to deliver on a promise to get it taught more in schools. And the reason why they're doing that is because it can be taught. So you can get better. And I don't really speak that language either. I can't quite imagine what that would be like. So I'm going all in on this, and I'm going to have to put I'm going to have to put my life in your hands when I'm saying, what's it like to hate or to struggle with articulating, with actually talking, like you sense in a conversation. We talked a little earlier this week about words just slipping out of your grasp or forgetting things. It's much deeper than that. It's like a discomfort with words. We're going to come at it from a variety of angles, but that is where I'd like you to start. That's where I'd like to start, if you can. And I know it's a weird one to say ring in and talk to me, but you'll be fine. I'll look after you, and you can tell me how frustrating it is to know that you could and should be better at talking. That's the simplest way of putting it. You could and should be better at talking, but you're not. What's it like? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Tony writes, I'm too shy to call in, which is obviously going to be a bit of a problem this hour, but we will soldier on. A large part of me supports the idea of including Oracy skills in schools. I can see that a good vocabulary would help people express themselves and, more importantly, understand themselves. But I do wonder whether it might result in the homogenizing of speech patterns of people as it rolls out. I don't know that it would. I know what you mean when you talk about media-trained politicians all sounding the same, Tony, but lots of people who are good at speaking sound very different. And media training isn't just about oracy. It's about there's all sorts of tactics going on in media training that are not linked to oracy. It's often about not saying things as much as it is about saying things. 11 minutes after 11 is the time. That is the question. What's it like? One of my closest friends, who's no longer with us, used to be terrified of talking publicly. He was one of the most engaging and erudite people you could ever encounter privately, and he was also the life and soul of most gatherings. He would be the lad who had the stories. He would be the lad that had the anecdotes, the one that had the tales, and some of them were so good that you'd ask him to tell you again about the time he encountered two Pakistani cricket stars at a nightclub in Nottingham and set up an impromptu game of cricket on the edge of the dance floor. I mean, he just had the most incredible stories. But when he moved into business, he trained in commercial law, ended up working in digital media. He was absolutely terrified of making speeches, and he got coaching. And before he died, he would be standing up. There was one famous occasion when he was on stage with Jack Whitehall, bantering like a professional in front of a couple of thousand people in a blooming great industry expo. So you can learn it. It's such a personal issue for me, this, because I am the polar opposite of the people that would benefit most from this kind of coaching, this kind of skill. I don't say that to boast. There are lots and lots of things I'm absolutely rubbish at. Not particularly good with numbers, for example. But the idea of not being able to explain yourself, to not use spoken language, crucially, not written language. What if you're brilliant at writing, but you just get frustrated talking? What would that be like? I have literally no clue.